Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Anisha Yadav, and I lead the North America Customer Success team at Revinate. Today, joining us again is Sherri, globally recognized revenue management expert for hospitality. Sherri, thank you again for your time. And let's start with some questions. So, the first one, in comparison to your first survey that was in early March, did the respondents share any feedback in this current survey on their initial response and maybe what they could have done differently or any learnings that stood out?
Yeah, it was actually kind of interesting. The top one was that, and there were lots of comments. It's almost like reading several books, but the biggest one was people said, well, I wouldn't change anything. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they couldn't control a lot of what was going on, whether it be by the government or their chain. The second one, which was not far behind, was that they wished that they'd acted faster because it took them too long to get moving. And the third one was that they wished that they had started deploying some of their marketing tactics a lot earlier. So I think the biggest part was that kind of out of their control, and they wish that they had moved more quickly.
Mm-hmm. And like leading into that, like what were some of the regional differences in the strategies that worked for hotels or that did not work for them, when you compare like say APAC versus North America or the EMEA market?
That was actually really, really interesting. As we saw in the first survey in APAC, people were less likely to have cut rates, and I really do think some of that has to do with the fact that they've been through bad situations before, so they know how to respond. But you started to see some other things that came on this time, where there are huge differences in the way that that employees were. I mean, the way costs were cut. And so in the Americas and Europe, it was much more likely to have laid off employees. And in Asia Pacific, it was much more likely to have cut salaries or to redeploy employees into other sorts of positions. So that was really very, very interesting. And there's also in Asia Pacific, and again, this could be because they've been through nothing as bad as this, but they've been through other bad things before. More tendency, again, redeploy employees, get involved with get involved with the community, building brand awareness and different sorts of things like that. Whereas in the Americas, there was more community service sorts of things.
Right. And like, I know you had some open-ended questions in your survey. So what were some of the creative tactics or strategies that were mentioned by the hoteliers that you have seen that, read in your survey responses during this time?
Well, I mean, a lot of it had to do with marketing, really. And it was like, okay, let's look for market segments that need attention. So whether it be healthcare workers or serving as quarantine hotels, and that was a lifeline for a lot of hotels, or maybe doing stay-at-home sorts of things where people have to, maybe people like work from home, or any sort of thing to get people there. I think the other part with this too is that some markets that we might not normally look for right now are attractive. The other thing that came through was long-term stay. If you're kind of trying to attract that market because they would be there for a while. And then there's a lot with community service in terms of, you've got the opportunity, you've got time, that's for sure, and you've got the employees who are already very hospitality minded, and so this is a great way to build brand awareness and to help the community at the same time.
Right. And I know you're based in Singapore, and in your survey analysis, you mentioned that how APAC as a region has done kind of better into managing the pandemic and due to the earlier outbreak that they have, like SARS, etc., in the region. So what can other hoteliers globally learn from this market, Asia Pacific market? And what is your advice to hotels in these other regions?
The biggest thing that really, really surprised me was I asked people, well, did you have a plan? Did you have a contingency plan? There was only 35% of people did. And that is shocking. That's absolutely shocking. And in APAC, it was higher. I mean, still was bad, I would say. It was 44%. But the biggest thing, have a plan. I mean, come on. So be writing down what happens now And hopefully we don't have to go through something like this, but something will happen. What if there's an earthquake? What if there's a flood? What if there's some other kind of natural disaster or something? Have a plan on the things that you're going to do, because when you have that kind of plan, you're going to be more likely to be, you're not going to panic as much. And you're going to, okay, first I close the hotel, and then I do this kind of marketing plan, and then I do this with my employees. At least if you've got some kind of plan, it makes it a whole lot easier. So I think that's one of the the biggest things that really came out. And in Asia Pacific, I was talking with some people the other day about it, is that you look at in Europe, really the only recent natural disaster, anything they had to deal with, is in Iceland they had the volcano. And in the U.S., the natural disasters tend to be more regional. It could be like hurricanes, or it might be earthquakes or something like that. But in the Americas, we haven't had anything like this. South America, they've had Zika. Africa, they've had Ebola and other things. So I think it's kind of that's not the kind of experience you want to get, where you've got experience with bad things. But be ready. Don't be just sitting there. It's like, oh, now what do I do?
That's right. And like from the responses, what do you gauge as the overall sentiment across the global respondents that you had over the timeline recovery? What does the recovery timeline look like?
Well, again, it varies by part of the world. It actually, I found in the Americas, I thought, and it's still early. That might not be what people want to hear, but it still is early. I thought they tended to be a lot more optimistic about it. They said, oh, maybe like 3 months, and I was going, yeah, right. In Asia Pacific, it was more in the 6 to 9 month region.
Yeah.
People talked about what's been going on in China, but a lot of it too has so much. We all know this has so much to depend on what's going on in other parts of the world. And there's some of it that you don't really necessarily have control over. But I would say the majority of people were probably in the 6 to 9 months. That's when it was starting to recover. Obviously, not back to the way it was in 6 to 9 months.
Right. And just to wrap it up, you said contingency plan, but what are the other maybe couple of things that you would want to share with our audience here about what can they take away from the survey findings?
Another big part of this was trying to hold on to your rate. Right now you are going to have to offer some lower rates, but to have those be very tightly targeted, whether it be as a quarantine hotel or for healthcare workers or for a staycation or something like that. And then the other thing is being flexible. And because right now customers are really worried, and most parts of the world were pretty open with giving refunds and different things like that, and just be flexible. And I think that's something that kind of came through. Not only be flexible with your guests, but also be flexible with your employees. And another one that came through is just be human. Understand where people are coming from, whether it be your employees, your colleagues, or your guests. Because everybody's going through a rough time right now, and show your community.
Great. I think this is really helpful, Sherri. Thank you so much again for your time.
And thanks for having me.